Well, Coasters, what a pleasure it is to be in Greymouth here today, and to be sitting down with Tony Sullivan, who's one of the partners in Hannon and Seddon, and has been, I must say, for a long time. And Daffodil Day, and beautiful daffodils right around the office, Tony.
Yes, there are.
The girls have done a great job.
Yeah.
It was an absolute privilege for me to be contacted by one of your office ladies, and she said, David Carruthers is going to retire. How about doing something special for him? Now, David and I get on really well, and I thought we can do something here.
Yes.
So, Tony, big law firm, it's a shame to see David leaving Guinness Street, which is, and the history in Guinness Street. Do you follow the history with the lawyers?
Yes, yeah. Well, I was aware that he was actually renting a house on this site when he first came to Greymouth,
Right.
which is pretty amazing. And then he moved to two other offices in Guinness Street during his time, Guinness and Kitchenham, and then his own firm he formed with Peter Carruthers and Wetherall. So yeah, Guinness Street's been a big part of his life.
And of course, Guinness Street in Greymouth and West Coast law history has got, is it 4 judges?
Yes, I think 4 judges, and it's probably named after Sir Arthur Guinness or one of his family, who was a Speaker of the House and a lawyer also. So a lot of history in Guinness Street.
And I recall Doug Tucker,
Yes.
who was
Yep.
held in very high esteem.
Yes, John Cadenhead was another.
I played tennis with John Cadenhead.
Yeah.
What an awesome fella he was.
Yes, yeah.
Now, David's been with you a couple of years, and he told me during the interview that I did with him that it's actually been the 2 happiest years of his life in law, and he said it was because of the expertise that floated around the office and those things. What's your view on that?
Well, it was interesting how it all happened. I heard on a Sunday night that there'd been a fire at the local Indian restaurant, and I thought about it, and I knew David's office backed onto it, and then someone rang me and said that Carruthers and Wetherall had been smoked out and there'd been some fire damage. So I rang David that evening and said, he told me what had happened, and I said, well, look, we've got offices out the back that have just become vacant. The mining consultant had just left a couple of weeks before. If you and Peter want to bring your gear in and catch your breath, you're very welcome to. So they took us up on that offer. Our office smelt of smoke for quite a while until that sort of wore off, and so they quietly got up and running for 5 or 6 weeks, or it might have been a couple of months, and then they approached Colin and myself and said, look, we're at the point now, age-wise and office-wise, where starting again would be quite a big thing. We don't have premises, as you know. How would you feel if we came in with you? So within a few hours we'd nutted out something that suited both of us, and it's worked really well. They're both different personalities, both have different senses of humour, but we've really enjoyed our time with them. And we have a lunchtime meeting every Wednesday between the fees earners. There's normally 6 or 7 of us in here, and a lot of good banter across the table, and that makes the work so much easier. So it's been a real pleasure to have both David and Peter here. And David's realised now that it's probably time to move on, but we're very sorry to see him go.
Well, isn't it great though that, look, he's in really good health. Fiona,
Yes.
she's in great health.
Yep.
They've got grandchildren. What a perfect time.
Yes.
To
move on.
Yeah, to move on.
And it's interesting. Like, we're a small law community here, but you don't really get to know the other lawyers well, other than professionally, until you work with them. And David's very active. He's got an e-bike. Him and Fiona go caravanning a lot of weekends. They might only go to Punakaiki or Lake Brunner. It might not be far. They've got blow-up kayaks, which they use a lot in the lakes and rivers. They're big gardeners. They've got a huge garden. He's a big reader. He does a lot more deep reading than I do, so we've had some great chats about philosophy and religion and things, and it's been a great chance working with David to get to know him. We've been to conferences together, so you're doing the plane trips and the car rides together over the Alps, and you're ready to get to know someone a lot better than you certainly did when they were in another firm.
Tony, how many years have you been in law?
Well, I came in late. I was 25 when I went back to law school. So,
Oh, an old fella.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness me.
I couldn't have done it straight out of school. I wouldn't have had the stickability. But
Yeah.
as a mature student, I managed it. And so I joined Hannon and Seddon when I was about 29, 30, I think. So, yeah, I've been in the law for about 35 years now.
Goodness me.
Yeah.
Well, I guess this is a time to celebrate. David's been a big part of your law community here, or
Yes.
the coast law community.
Yep.
And of course, he's our deputy mayor in Westland and doing extremely well.
Yes.
It's made such a difference. And so thank you so much for your time. If you had a very short thing to say to David and Fiona, what would it be?
Well, look, enjoy your retirement. You're a great couple. You've got great interests. I forgot to mention they both paint. One of the prize paintings I've got is one of Fiona's. She caught the Craigieburn Range exactly as I saw it, and a lot of other painters like Austin Deans couldn't do that. David's a very accomplished painter. They're physically active. They love travel. So you just really enjoy your retirement and keep at the politics, David. You seem to do that well.
Well, Coasters, that was Tony Sullivan, one of the nicest guys you'll actually come across. I've always appreciated. He's just a very down to earth. He's a nice guy, and we'll catch you later. Well, Coasters, I'm with Peter Wetherell. Now, Peter and David Carruthers have been partners for I don't know how long. Peter, really appreciate you taking 5 minutes to sit down and share with Coasters your experience, your partnership with David Carruthers, who on Daffodil Day, which it is retiring after 47 years.
Yes.
Peter, how did it all begin?
Well, David and I were originally together in the firm of Guinness and Kitchenham, a long-standing firm in Greymouth. So David was a partner there when I arrived as a young coaster new coaster about 40 years ago. So I was there for about 3 years, and then David decided to move out of Guinness and Kitchenham and asked me to go into partnership with him. So that was early 1984. So David and I had a partnership for about 34 years.
Wow.
Perhaps a little longer, until unfortunately our updated premises were destroyed in a fire, which led us to eventually amalgamating with Hannon and Seddon. So it's we had a long partnership. So it just ticked away. Without a lot of formality. Actually, we always had what's called a partnership at will. So we never had a formal partnership agreement. We were always able to just agree on what needed to be done in terms of managing the partnership. So
you strike me as being quite different in character. I mean, you and I played a lot of badminton together years and years ago.
Yes, I can't remember who won.
Well, I always thought it was me, but you probably remember it was you. But I think you may be right.
Yeah. Now, I remember being a West Coast rep.
Once or twice.
Yeah.
Now look, your personality and David's personality quite different from what I can see.
Yeah.
You must have had some really interesting discussions.
I suppose in a sense we had quite different practices, in the sense that I did a lot of specialising in family law, which David did some of, but I had that sort of particular part of the practice. But it was a fairly general practice. David, of course, was more committed and involved in business management side of things, companies and so forth, than my practice, which was more the family law. But I suppose in any partnership you both bring to the table different skills and personalities and stuff, and obviously it worked because we were together for 34 odd years. So actually, just slightly longer than my marriage. So.
Wow. Did you ever get him on a badminton court?
No, I can't say I saw David take a lot of exercise, but he was more doing that in terms of, I think, walking and now biking. So
he's very fit. He's very fit.
He's fitter than I am.
We look at Guinness Street here, and we've got 4 judges.
Yeah.
John Cadenhead played tennis with us.
Yeah.
Arthur Jamieson.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, I'm one of those fortunate few now who can remember some of the really old timers, such as Cyril McGinley and the farewells for him and all that type of thing. So, Westland District Law Society bar dinners were always exciting as to who would end up reciting poetry or something like that under the influence, but that was fair enough. So, I've got a lot of happy memories of those early times too, when you had people like Doug and Cyril and all that fully involved in the bar. Yeah.
Well, look, I remember Cyril well, and what a jovial man he was.
Yes,
I mean,
yes,
it was just a real pleasure.
Yeah.
Peter, if you had a message, a kind of not a final message, but a message for David and Fiona, what would it be after all this time?
I think particularly for David's a guy who loves to be involved in projects and doing things, and of course that's fit in very well with his current involvement as Deputy Mayor and so forth. So I guess I'd encourage David to continue to pursue those sort of loves and interests he has, because as I say, he always needs a project to be moving on with. So I've got to be careful what I say, because Fiona mightn't necessarily agree with his continued commitment. But I think for David, retirement needs to be active and involved, because that's the sort of guy he is. He loves to solve problems, and around the table here at Hannon and Seddon, he's often been very helpful in terms of thinking outside the square, and that's a particular strength that David has. So I do wish him well in his retirement, and Fiona particularly. Fiona's been a lovely wife of a partner, and she and my wife are close as well, so wish them both well in their retirement.
Well, there we go, coasters. Peter Weatherall. Now, I can't finish this without just confirming it was actually Peter who beat me. I do remember it, but I just didn't want to confess. Peter, thanks so much.
Yeah.
And it's a great tribute that you and your partners have paid to David Carruthers as he retires from 47 years in the legal profession. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, coasters, it's my pleasure to be here today. I'm with Colin Smith, a lawyer in Greymouth, and it's Daffodil Day, and this is the beginning of an interview which will lead into a full interview with David Carruthers, who's retiring. Colin, thank you so much for taking the time to lead into this. Tell me about David Carruthers.
Well, I've been practicing in Greymouth for just over 30 years. David for considerably longer, 40 odd years. And in the time that I've worked in Greymouth as a lawyer, I've had a lot of interaction with David, and I've found David a great practitioner to work with. He's a real pragmatist. He doesn't get bogged down in the technical. I certainly approach the law from a problem-solving point of view. David's the same. He's quick to find solutions, and he's looking for solutions rather than dragging things out in a legal contest. So a real pragmatist, really good to work with, and he's also got a great sense of humour. So as many laughs go with every conversation.
Colin, he's told me that the two most enjoyable years of his life as a lawyer have been with Hannon and Seddon.
Yeah, and look, when the unfortunate fire happened at Carruthers and Weatherall, and Peter and David came and joined us, it was a real lift to us as well, because it brought a whole new dynamic to the firm, and it was amazing actually, because both practitioners just fitted in like a hand into a glove. It was amazing how well it worked. David's been very much enjoyed around the office. The team really enjoy his sense of humour. I hear a lot of banter. My wife's the receptionist in the office here, and I hear a lot of banter between her and David, and they're having a spar at each other quite often. But it's great. It's great. The team have really enjoyed his presence.
Now today's Daffodil Day, and you've got the beautiful bunch of daffodils on the desk there, and I see you're wearing one. Important for all of us, isn't it?
Yeah, well it's very important for me, Bruce, particularly because I'm a cancer survivor. 5 years ago. I went through the cancer journey. The odds weren't, I was told the odds weren't very good at all. I've managed to survive it, and my wife's also been through the cancer journey, and her journey has just finished 2 months ago. So it's very, very poignant for us, and I've got to say, I can't say enough about the work of the Cancer Society and the support they provide in terms of accommodation, in terms of advice, in terms of travel, you name it. They really are there to help us, and the journey was made that much easier by the work of the Cancer Society. So I implore anybody that has, and we all, I don't think there's probably a person in our community that's not touched by either themselves or a family member or a friend or a colleague or an associate in the community who hasn't been affected by cancer. So it touches us all in one way or another. And the work of the Society is incredibly important in terms of helping sufferers get through that journey a lot easier. So today's a very, very important day for me, for my wife and our family in terms of supporting the Cancer Society and its work. They do an amazing job.
Well, look, thank you, Colin. And what I'm going to do now is I've booked in with an appointment with David under the name of Simone. I'm about to go and have a talk.
Well, you'll enjoy it. You'll enjoy it, Bruce.
Well, Coasters, it's my pleasure today to be with David Carruthers. And David, I know it's a bit of a surprise, and your staff have been largely responsible for this, but we wanted to record our gratitude for the fact that you've put so many years into the legal profession on the coast, and judging by the people that I've been talking to, they've actually all enjoyed working with you.
Hard to believe.
It's incredible, isn't it? Where did you start as a lawyer?
Well, I've been here 47 years, Bruce, and I originally had a job lined up in a firm in Christchurch in my second to last year at university, and for various reasons in my last year at university they decided to take someone else on, so I was undecided what to do. My father had business interests in Westport and suggested that I contact a lawyer in Westport called Brian Lovell.
Oh gosh, I remember Brian.
Yes,
Brian?
yes, he's one of the great identities of the West Coast Bar, and he suggested that he had nothing available and suggested I contact a fellow called Doug Tucker, who was the Crown Solicitor in Greymouth, a firm called Guinness and Kitchingham, very historic legal practice here, so I contacted Doug, and I was 20 at the time, and offered me a job, and so I finished my final year at university, which was 1973.
Oh wow!
So I came over here in October 1973 as a 21-year-old, completely green as you'd expect, and started work, and in an environment which is so different from today, it's hard to imagine, because there was an old lawyer called Merv Jemison who every day would open the mail and cut up the envelopes and then draft letters on the backs of envelopes and stuff.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
So there was no technology of any kind, and this is years before faxes even emerged. And so I started work then. Fiona and I got married in 1974. The next year we were engaged at that stage. And then we built our first house, house in Power Road in Greymouth in 1975. And,
so when you went to university, that was in Canterbury?
In Canterbury, yes.
Do you ever still keep in touch with any of the people that were in your era?
Not well. We sort of knock into each other from time to time. For example, Alan Stobie, who was a solicitor, recently retired and well known to you in Hokitika, was in my class.
I'll be blowed.
Yeah, he was.
Gosh.
He was, I think, a year older than me, but we were in the same class. We didn't know each other then because there were hundreds of people in the class, and so. But yeah, we see and have contact all of the time with now fellow practitioners who we came up through the ranks with, really, and they're all like me. They're all getting to that stage of wanting to retire and do something else.
So Guinness and Kitchingham,
Yes.
very gosh, it's a very
Well, it's
well-known name.
Well, it's a very historic firm because Guinness was Sir Arthur Guinness, and he was an MP here and Speaker of the House in Parliament, and he was a lawyer, and that's why he's titled, he's Sir, because he was the Speaker, and so he was an MP here. And then the Kitchinghams were sort of father and son, but the firm goes back, like this firm, Hannah & Seddon, where I'm sitting in now, goes back to about 1865, the very early days, really, of the establishment of the province of Westland, in this case Greymouth. So yeah, a very, very historic practice.
So did you work with people like Arthur Jamieson?
Yes, the senior partner was a fellow called Doug Tucker, who was also a qualified accountant. And I went into partnership with Doug and Arthur Jamieson. I must have been about 25, I can't recall the year, so I was fairly young, and because I started really young. And then about 1980, Doug Tucker came in one day and said that he'd been appointed a district court judge in Napier and would be leaving, and Doug was a very experienced lawyer, and the prospect of not having him around was quite terrifying. But he left, and then so I continued on, and then about 3 years later left Guinness and Kitchingham and set up the firm of Carruthers and Wetherall with Peter Wetherall, who I'd employed at Guinness and Kitchingham a couple of years before, and so Peter and I then continued in partnership for about 35 years.
Well, look, Arthur Jamieson and I played a lot of tennis together.
Oh, really?
Peter Wetherall and I
Yeah.
played a lot of badminton.
Did you?
We did.
Wow.
So these sporting types in the
Yeah.
legal fraternity.
Yes. Well, Arthur's long gone from Guinness and Kitchingham. He's in Christchurch, I think, now living. So in the 17th of June 2018, we had a fire in our building which I own, where my practice was, and there are a number of tenancies associated with the building, and someone burgled the restaurant that was there, one of the tenancies, set a light to it, and as a consequence of that, the building was severely damaged, but our practice was very significantly damaged, mainly water and smoke damage, and so we couldn't use those premises, and I've only just finished repairing those very recently. So the issue was, well, what would we do? At that stage I was about 66 and really keen to retire, but
You're in rather good nick for 66.
I wouldn't say that. I'm 68 now, Bruce. So, I came and spoke to Tony Sullivan here at Hannah & Seddon and suggested that we consider amalgamating our practices. Ours was a much smaller practice than Hannah & Seddon, of course. They surprisingly agreed, Colin and Tony, and so Peter and I started here, or came to work here at Hannah & Seddon shortly thereafter, from October 2018. So we've been here for the last couple of years, and it's probably been in some ways the most enjoyable period of my legal career, just working in a much bigger environment with good people and a very good firm, and so it's been fantastic. And then, so just to finish the story, there is a young woman lawyer here called Charlotte Perkins, who a year ago took a year off for maternity leave, and so she's returning in the next day or so from maternity leave. So it's an appropriate time for me to leave. So
Over the years, David, you've been a major part of West Coast, but principally Greymouth history. Greymouth's been through some highs and lows.
Yes.
Do you feel that as a lawyer directly as it's happening, like when the coal
Yes.
was booming,
Yes.
and when it busted and.
Well, our profession seems to be always involved in those sorts of things, one way or the other. And when things are good, there's often work for the legal profession, but when things are bad, there's often work for the legal profession as well. And Greymouth has certainly in recent years had some knocks, there's no question about that. And the most significant was, of course, the downturn in the underground mining, coal mining, and culminating in the Pike River mine explosion. And so that caused a mass exodus of people from Greymouth, miners. Prior to that, the West Coast had been booming because of the influx of miners. And then that reversed itself, and they all sort of disappeared, understandably, because underground mining is pretty much finished now, called coal mining. And so Greymouth has gone through a period of decline, really, and it's a little hard to know where it's going to head. But having said that, generally things seem to be going very well here.
Gosh, aren't houses selling?
Yeah,
Goodness me.
we've had the most amazing run in the last 6 months or so in the housing market. Everything is selling, and people are getting good prices for their properties, and you wonder why that's happening. There's a certain influx of people coming here and buying cheaper properties, no doubt about that. But generally speaking, the economy, in spite of the coronavirus repercussions and so on affecting tourism, seem to be ticking over surprisingly well these days on the whole of the coast.
It's a good sign, isn't it?
It is a good sign. Yes.
David, if there's a young man sitting at home watching this, or a young lady thinking, I wonder if the legal profession is for me,
Yeah.
would you have any advice for them on how do they do it? How do they get there?
Yeah.
How do they go forward?
Well, an awful lot of people start off going to university and doing a law degree. That's very common these days. Although people today tend to do law and commerce degrees. In our day, you just tend to do a law degree. And I think there are 5 universities in New Zealand pumping out several thousand graduates every year, law graduates. And as provincial practicing lawyers, we can't get those people to come and work here. We don't know where the heck they go. And it's extremely difficult to entice young lawyers to come to the provinces, because today young people are brought up in a very urban environment, and they perceive that the future is to be had in an urban environment in big law firms and so on, and that coming to a perceived backwater like the West Coast is a retrograde step for them. Whereas the opposite is the case. We've just taken on a young guy here called Alex Coleman, and he comes from a farming background on the West Coast. So what tends to happen is that people who've have a connection with the coast, say, might come back here, but the chances of us attracting a young lawyer or a young graduate who's from Auckland here are very remote, and it's very remote they'd come and stay. So there needs to be some kind of connection with the district if young professionals will come here and actually stay. But it's not just the legal profession, it's dentistry and the medical profession. It's a problem for the provinces attracting young people. But every profession is massively changing, though, of course, and the way that we work today is completely different to the way we might have worked 40 years ago.
Wasn't that an unbelievable story about the envelopes being opened and the notes being written on the back of it? That's amazing. I mean, was that to save paper, or? I don't.
Well, it was Merv Jemison's practice, but in those days we didn't dictate. We didn't have dictating machines. We didn't have computers, of course, and so everything we did was hand drafted. And so guys like old Merv, he was in his 70s then, and late 70s, and was an absolutely beautiful drafter, what we call draftsman.
Yeah.
Because he spent his whole life writing documents and writing letters, and all hand drafted, and so you thought about what you do. And these days, of course, everything's quick fire. We either dictate things on a dictation machine, or we send emails or text. And increasingly, I do an awful lot of my work on my phone, and send text to people and other forms of, that sort of brief communication. So the world has dramatically changed.
The changes are huge, and you've worked with some office ladies that had to use typewriters.
Yep.
And never made a mistake.
Yep. Well, I think everyone made a mistake, but they were highly skilled, because in the old days, when I started, if you did a document, there were 3 or 4 carbonized copies.
Yes.
And so if you made a mistake, there were implications, and you had to start again or fix all of the copies, and it was a real drama. Today, it's I think technology is fantastic, and it's made our work, that side of it, I think, much better. And so you can be anywhere. I mean, I've been sitting in a yacht in the Greek islands with my phone and doing work on it, and people don't know where I am. And that's what you can do with technology. You're not looking for a phone booth.
So probably one of the most important decisions you've made in your life was 1974, when you married the lovely Fiona.
Yep.
Important.
Oh, massively.
As a lawyer.
Yeah.
As a life, for you.
Absolutely. And yes, it absolutely was. And I often say about us that we're probably the most boring people in the world, because in some ways, because we've been married for 46 years. I've done the same job for exactly the same period of time. We've lived in the same place for that period of time. So we have been remarkably, what's the word, stable, or wrong word probably, but that relationship obviously has been key to my life and all of the things that we've achieved.
David, Fiona and yourself have travelled widely. A lot of us haven't. I mean, I certainly haven't. Most beautiful place you've ever been to? Where would that be?
Well, that's really hard to say, because everywhere it has its own unique beauty, and I tend to think that you find beauty wherever you are. And you might be in England, and I remember before I went to England, I could never understand why people wanted to go to England. I had in my mind this sort of old-fashioned place, a historic place, but I found England one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. The rural England is simply unbelievably beautiful, and but there's beauty to be found almost everywhere, and I think it's really hard to say what is the most beautiful. Probably the west coast of the South Island of New Zealand is right up there, Bruce.
Now, coasters, that's the right answer. now, David, you've tramped an awful lot. You've done a lot of walking. Have you done many of the tracks in New Zealand?
No, not at all. I used to be a tramper when I was younger,
Yep.
and it's only probably in recent years that we've been doing a lot more walking, and we're Fiona's runs are part of an organisation called Hoki Hikers, which is a group that walks every Tuesday in Hokitika.
It's become a big group.
It's a big group, and every week the group walks a different track around the west coast, somewhere, different place, and even though it happens every week, there's always more places to go that they haven't been to, or we haven't been to, and so I'm looking forward to doing more of that from next week.
So today's Daffodil Day of 2020, and next week you're retired. What are you looking forward to from a retirement point of view? What are you going to do?
Well, that's the big question, of course, and I've been mulling over retiring for 20 years, and Fiona says she's been very patient and waited for that me to figure it all out. But
Yeah.
Retiring is actually quite a difficult thing in our profession, and because you have so many connections with people, go back so far, and it's really hard to actually step away from that. And so there is a natural fear of how you're going to fill your time in. And so for years, every retired person I meet, I say, and so, what will you be doing at 10:30 on Thursday morning? Sort of trying to get someone to tell me what the key to retirement success is. But look, we're keen caravanners, and I'm taking the caravan away next week. But we have a large property with gardens and stuff, and we spend an awful lot of time doing that kind of stuff. And Bruce, I'm your deputy mayor in Westland District Council, and that occupies time and hopefully some more quality time.
Well, that's very good news. That's really good news. One thing I forgot to ask you as we were starting the conversation, the judges, are they as, some of them look like they're pretty grumpy, some of them, they all look intelligent. Do you remember John Cadenhead?
Oh yes, very well. It's interesting because we're sitting in Guinness Street, and I started my career in Guinness Street, and I'm ending it in Guinness Street, and I can think of about 4 judges who practiced law in Guinness Street, Greymouth. One of them was John Cadenhead, a firm called Taylor and Cadenhead. He was here in my time, and John moved to Christchurch, became a barrister and then a district court judge. There was my former partner Doug Tucker, became a district court judge in Napier. There was Clinton Roper, he became Sir Clinton Roper. He worked at Guinness and Kitchingham.
Right.
There was a fellow called Alan Lawson of Lawson, Taylor and Cadenhead, who became a High Court judge. And then there was Sir Arthur Guinness, who was Speaker of the House.
All from the street here?
All from Guinness Street, yes.
You're an illustrious company.
Well, it's interesting that this particular street in Greymouth has had such a now a forgotten history, really. I mean, who knows or cares about that these days? But that's what's gone on.
I think we all care, and it's amazing when people learn about it and they say, "Why haven't we been told this before?" And so I really thank you for that. I had no idea.
Oh, well, I think if you asked any of the young lawyers around the place, they wouldn't know either. And the name you mentioned, John Cadenhead, wouldn't know who John Cadenhead was, let alone my partner Doug Tucker, who left. But it's funny, isn't it? Because I mean, Doug was a big wheel here 20 years ago, or 30 years ago was it when he left, and everyone knew Doug, but now no one would know Doug, and that's a commentary on the realities of life, isn't it? That we can think we're important and so on, but in reality we just leaves in the breeze. You know, we get blown through, and people seem to get us. We're getting philosophical here, Bruce.
I love it. Look, David, I really appreciate you taking the opportunity to talk with us. I think it's really important because it's important to record the fact that you've devoted such a huge part of your life to the legal profession on the coast. I'd like to wish you, and I'm sure every coaster will join in wishing you and Fiona the very best in retirement. You are both in the fortunate position that you're in wonderful condition, and not everybody is. And so, look, the very best going forward. Looking forward to seeing you put more of your energies into Western District Council. I mean, that we couldn't possibly do any better than that.
No, I'm looking forward to that too. It'd be good.
We'll catch you later.
Bruce, many thanks. Much appreciated.
Well, folks, I'm with Jana, who's David Carruthers' secretary. Jana, David did tell me that his 2 years with Hannon and Seddon, the last 2 years of his career, been probably the happiest of his legal profession.
Oh, that's good to hear, yeah.
Now, Daffodil Day today, and he's retiring.
I know, last day for David. It's been wonderful working with him, and we all wish him the best, him and Fiona, for his retirement.
Look, thanks so much for that, Jana.
No problem.
And I'm so delighted that you decided to get interviewed. It's not easy, is it?
Absolutely not, and it's the last time I'll probably ever do it.
David Carruthers has been an important part of the Greymouth legal fraternity for many years. So we wish him well in his retirement and hope that him and his wife get some downtime and some time to enjoy it. So good luck, David, and I've had great dealings with you over the years and great conversations, and enjoy your retirement.
Well, David, this is your last day at the office today. I want to wish both you and Fiona all the very best for the future. Don't become a stranger. We've really enjoyed your presence here, and particularly your sense of humour and your banter. So we don't want to lose that relationship, even though you're finishing today. All the very, very best for the future, and keep in touch, David. Thanks.
Well, folks, I'm with Naomi, and Naomi, David's daughter.
Yes, I am.
Now, Naomi, what's it like? I mean, your entire life's been spent with a dad as a lawyer.
Yeah, it certainly has. I know, 47 years.
a-
And I'm only 38 of it.
It's a long time, isn't it?
It is, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
He's retired now after 47 years,
Yes.
and his partners have asked me to put this together, and it's been interesting talking to the various people.
Yeah.
What's your message to your dad?
Well, I think, you know, from us as his children, we're just very proud of him, and you know, we've watched him have a very solid career. He's been very dedicated, and yeah, he's probably one of the most efficient people I know. And the feedback you get from a lot of people is that, yeah, you know, they need something done, and he gets it done fast. You know, he doesn't muck around, and you know, we've probably all got similar traits in some ways to him, which I think we're thankful for, and yeah, just very proud of him for everything that he's achieved in his life.
So what do you think Mum's going to say?
Well, it's tricky. I mean, she's going to have him 24/7.
Which is pretty fantastic, isn't it?
That's right. Oh, and I think, you know, she's ready to have him home as well, and for them to, you know, get out and do whatever they want, you know. And I mean, they've had a very good life, and they do get out and about, but you know, this is the time to really enjoy everything they've worked hard for over the years.
It must be great for your children to have young grandparents.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
And
absolutely.
I see Fiona's walking every track in the country at the
Yeah,
moment.
she is.
Isn't she?
Yeah,
Isn't she doing great?
loves it. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm sure Dad will be right there and hokey hikers. And
He will too. And of course,
Yeah.
we're lucky to have him as Deputy Mayor in
Absolutely.
Western, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and he's loving that too. You know, being a part of all that. And I think, you know, he offers a lot there too.
I
his
don't
skills
think there's any
knowledge.
doubt about that.
Yeah.
Well, look, Naomi, thanks so much for putting your 2 minutes in here.
Thank you for having
Really,
me.
really appreciate it, and let's celebrate David's 47 years
Absolutely.
in the legal profession.
Well done, Dad. We love you.
Dave, we go back a long way, you and I. I can remember 47 years ago when you came here to Greymouth, the squash games, all the family things we went to, and over the years you had your lake batch up at Lake Brunner. You had really enjoyed that. I watched your kids grow up there, and then you moved on to politics. You're on Development West Coast. You're now the Deputy Mayor of Westland District Council, so you've done extremely well, and you've had a lot of business deals around too over the years. So you have been successful, but I think, Dave, your best success has been your family. You and Fiona have done a marvellous job of raising your children, and you have many grandchildren. So you've earned the right to retire, Dave. Sit back, do your hiking that you've been doing, but don't break a leg. And remember, above all, enjoy those grandkids as they grow up around you. Good luck, my friend.
Okay, so that was long-time former Greymouth District Mayor, Tony Cookshorn. Thanks, Tony. Really appreciate it.